Soulstring Media Group presents CEO Summit 2020, a multimedia platform presentation that highlights the brightest emerging and development stage companies who bring potentially transformative products and services to market. Bringing more than a decade of professional digital media services to its clients, Soulstring Media Group specializes in delivering timely, useful, and actionable information to institutional and retail investors across the globe. Now, here's your host of Soulstring Media Group CEO Summit 2020, Chloe Roberts.
Thank you, and hello to our listeners that are joining Soulstring Media Group's CEO5 Investor Series. This morning, we will be speaking with PeerLogix CEO Will Gorfein. PeerLogix is a powerful and fast-growing advertising technology and data aggregation company in the streaming video analytics space. Their proprietary data packages are used by entertainment and investment professionals to track real-time viewership activity that assists decision-makers in making informed business decisions. For interested investors, the company's stock trades on the OTC market under the symbol LOGX. With that said, it's a pleasure to bring back and introduce Will Gorfein. Hi, Will. Our CEO5 format is different from our last meeting. Today, I'll offer 5 questions that allow you to explain why the PeerLogix platform is different from other streaming data analytics platforms. Fast, informative, but still comprehensive. Let's start at the PeerLogix beginning. Tell us a bit of the story that led you to invent the technology that ultimately was awarded a patent and became the basis for PeerLogix.
Right, so we have to really rewind the clock to the long before time of 2013 era when the transition to streaming was really in its nascent days. And it's important to understand that back then, the smaller movie studios, and I don't mean the big blockbuster hits in theaters, but for an independent movie studio, really the business model was the direct to DVD sale, and before that, the direct to VHS sale. And complementary to that were also film rentals, whether it was Blockbuster or in this period of time, like a Redbox rental stand outside of a convenience store. So this really was the time before the business model had really shifted to getting your film on Netflix. It still was derived from the direct sale. And at the time, I was living in Southern California. I was doing some consulting work for a few different small movie studios, mainly technical work. And I saw firsthand how the owners of these studios, their big issue was their film financing relationships were breaking down. They were not getting the same ROI that they had historically been getting on their films. Put simply, less DVD sales, less DVD rentals, and frankly, they couldn't understand why. They couldn't understand, was it a quality of their work? Maybe the films were just not as good. Were they less popular? What was really the issue? And it's important to put yourself in their shoes for a second because these people are artists. And at the time, they didn't really see what was happening throughout the broader industry, which was people were less and less getting their entertainment from renting films, and more they were streaming them. And the issue was their films were not available on a streaming platform. They were dependent on someone getting up, putting their shoes on, going out to rent or purchase the product itself. And that model was breaking down. So the origin of PeerLogix was actually, I set up a project with a few of them, and what we did was we went out, we tracked some of their films online, the digital viewership, the digital popularity, and what came back was amazing. We opened up a spreadsheet of all the data, and what we saw was it was not an issue. It wasn't a creative issue. There wasn't any problem with the popularity of the film per se. The issue was with the distribution of the film. These movies, although historically been purchased in New York, LA, around the country, were now being watched around the world. They were being watched statistically just as much here in the US, but we're now reaching broader markets around the world. And it was a eureka moment. And the eureka moment was that, especially for small titles, and we hypothesize for all film and movie and television titles, that what I saw in my own daily life of streaming content was now really rapidly expanding and rapidly growing, and this was becoming the primary way that people were watching film and video. And unfortunately, for some of those small studios, that meant big changes and uncomfortable changes. And as an artist, if you've sold your film one way for 30 years, it can be a little daunting and scary to now say, okay, we're not going to get $10 per DVD purchase. We really have to put it online first and hope it gets watched and experiment with this new revenue model and hope it benefits us. But it was just abundantly clear what this data was saying, which was your film's popular, things are changing, and not only that, there are new opportunities around the world in other markets. Germany, South Korea, to name a couple that stood out back then. Just other international markets where their content at the time and today is more popular than ever. And, with that challenge, with that scary challenge, as was the case with them, presented what would eventually become many opportunities for them, and then also for us, which was this opportunity to really productize and build a business from what was at the time the genesis of the streaming industry.
Along with your innovative company comes some new trending phrases. Explain what "sit in the stream" means.
Right. So back in the earlier days of streaming television and movies, most of the streaming space was really comprised of open source OTT platforms, which still exist and are in wide use today. And what our technology is essentially a content distribution node that sits inside the open source OTT space, which watches, observes, and most importantly catalogs all the data associated with any request that's made to watch any of the television or movie content on these platforms. And we sit there, we record, and that's how we comprise our database on a daily basis. As the actual watching, as the actual viewership is happening, we're recording any initial watching of shows and movies.
Obviously, collecting, analyzing, categorizing, and eventually selling streaming data is the cornerstone of PeerLogix's success. A particular market, advertisers, represents a large group that needs to purchase and use your finished product. How do you leverage your data packages?
Right. Well, because we track the viewership behavior, whether it be title, genre, or behaviors of audiences, at the actual IP address level, it allows digital advertisers to really target the entire spectrum of cord cutters across the entire digital media landscape. Whether the individual's on their iPad, or whether it's connected TV or phone or websites they browse at a later time, this now creates the bridge between the digital advertiser and the actual cord cutter audience in one concise data buy or ad buy from their perspective.
In our last discussion, we discussed OTT platforms. In particular, how can PeerLogix help mid-tier OTT platforms?
Right. Our data gets used by streaming platforms for very precise, data-driven content acquisition strategies. And what that really means is, rather than a streaming platform essentially just shooting in the dark, making assumptions about what shows and movies are going to really get them what they want, which is new subscribers, new viewers, and prevent any cancellations from their platform, our data provides them the ability to choose which shows, choose the content that they can license in a very cost performative way, meaning what shows are going to get them the most new viewers, and also, just as importantly, which shows and movies may be overpriced that won't drive new subscribers and viewers the way they may have assumed without our data, and in short, be as efficient with their content licensing and acquisition budget as possible.
Let's end with this question in our CEO5 series. How can PeerLogix data help give investors in the entertainment industries strategic advantages?
Well, it's important to know that unlike for cable TV viewership, all of the streaming companies do not do not release the viewership numbers behind their shows and movies, whether it's Netflix, Disney, Apple TV Plus, Amazon Prime Video. I mean, you name them. None of them actually release the streaming viewership numbers, subscriber numbers. If they even release them at all, they'll only do so quarterly. And for a hedge fund or another investor in the public markets looking to actually invest in these companies, we all know that the subscriber and viewership numbers have an outsized effect on the stock price of, let's say, Netflix and others. And so it's just a very, very critical metric to measure and understand when deciding how to make allocations and investments in these companies. So just as an example, we were very excited to see Netflix for the first time in July actually release select viewership numbers for some of their titles. And it validated what our observations have been for years and the estimates that we've been making for now a few years and that hedge funds have been using now, based on what we see, viewership for, in this case, Netflix, but others as well. How does that actually translate into the day-to-day viewership that's occurring on these platforms for big shows and movies? One of the dynamics taking place is that a large media company, let's say again, Disney Plus or Netflix, they don't really want the investment professionals understanding if a movie underperformed or outperformed, because they like to keep that information to themselves. They like to keep it high level even when they do discuss it. And hedge funds are trying to quantify if the release of a single title or the portfolio of titles is actually leading to new subscribers and viewers or not. And so our viewership data seen on a day-to-day basis can, for a hedge fund, keep them honest, can keep these actual media companies honest, and gives them a signal, again, a critical signal, to understand, again, the day-to-day performance of these shows, which goes right into the decision-making for how much and in what structure of investment an investor wants to make into the stock or private investment of these companies.
Will, as always, thank you for joining us to explain the PeerLogix story. With better times still ahead for PeerLogix, I look forward to chatting again with you soon to find out more about the exciting times happening at your company.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I mean, this has been great. There's a lot happening in this industry right now. I'd love to check in again in the future and bring you and the whole listenership up to speed more on just what we're seeing on the ground here firsthand in the industry. It's certainly an exciting time. And again, thanks for having me on today.
Investors and other inquiring minds can find out more about PeerLogix by visiting www.peerlogix.com. And to our listeners, thanks for joining the CEO5 Investor Series presentation, and please subscribe to our channel to receive our latest series updates. CEO5 is a program that features some of the brightest CEOs and thought leaders in a broad range of industries. Until then, for Soulstring Media Group, I'm Chloe Roberts. Have a fantastic rest of your day.